Welcome back to Daily Flash. I'm Andrea Jackson. It is hurricane season across the country, and if you are not prepared, the storm could hit more than just your home. It could be devastating to your finances if you don't have the right homeowner's insurance. Here with some tips to avoid financial ruin is licensed insurance agent Dionna Humphery. Dionna, good to see you.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So this is a tough topic to battle. Many homeowners, they're not double checking to make sure they have the right coverage. How costly could this be?
It could be devastating. You know, as we saw with last year's hurricane in South Florida, you know, a lot of people were flooded out completely, lost their homes, lost their livelihoods, and so forth. So if you don't have the right insurance in place prior to the hurricane coming, you could be devastated.
How important is it, especially here in Florida, to make sure your homeowner's insurance is up to date even during hurricane season?
It's massively imperative, because what people don't understand about hurricane season is once a hurricane watch or warning is in effect, it doesn't matter if a baseball comes through your front window. You're under a hurricane deductible, which is a whole different ball game in the state of Florida, you know, as opposed to other states in the union.
I recall trying to buy my first home here, and we were under a hurricane watch, and I couldn't buy the home because I couldn't get insurance.
Yeah.
And there's this window where you have to wait it out.
Mm-hmm.
Is that specific to Florida, or is that in any situation where there's a hurricane?
That's in any state that has a hurricane possibility. So if a hurricane is approximately 100, 150 miles off the coast, then we start watching. Once it gets to the point where it becomes a straight up watch with the weather service,
Yeah.
then a bind freeze will go into effect. And it's not just one carrier, it's every carrier that's affected. They will not bind any insurance during that period of time. So that's why it's very important to think ahead and prepare for these eventualities so that you protect your family and everything you've worked for.
Regardless of whether you own the home yet or you're looking to buy the home.
Correct.
What types of insurance coverage do you recommend for hurricane season?
Well, if you're purchasing a home, you're getting home insurance. Your home insurance will cover the dwelling. So let's say, hypothetically, the entire house is ripped off the foundation.
Okay.
That is your dwelling A coverage. That's what covers that. Then you have your personal property coverage. That's everything you own. So let's say, hypothetically, you don't know what exactly you need to cover. Take your house, like a little Barbie house, and imaginary shake it upside down. Everything that hits the ground is your personal property.
Okay.
So that's what you have to think about in regards to protecting yourself.
And the advice here too is to maybe photograph or catalog everything in your home that you would have a great value attached to, correct?
Absolutely. And this is the biggest problem a lot of people have. They may put in new hardwood floors, or they may put in a whole new kitchen, but they never update their insurance to reflect, you know, these improvements on your house. And then something happens and you're like, well, no, I have a brand new $80,000 kitchen, or I have $15,000 floors, but they were never documented, so they're not covered.
Okay, let's talk money. What does a typical hurricane insurance policy cover?
Well, it's not just hurricane insurance. In the state of Florida, hurricanes are covered in your homeowner's policy. It's just under a separate deductible, where let's say hypothetically you have a $1,000 deductible on your home. A hurricane 2% deductible is separate from that. So like I said, if there's a warning or a watch, you're under that 2% deductible, which is not bad for a $100,000 house. But if you're talking a $1.3 million, that's a much larger deductible.
It's a huge risk too, right?
Yeah.
Well, are there any specific exclusions or limitations in a policy related to hurricanes?
Typically, you're going to pay for that. So, you know, if you're coastal, that's a whole different,
different ball game.
Whole different ball game. Your rating system is completely different than, say, somebody who lives on the interior, who is not as great of risk from a hurricane. So it just depends on where your house sits and the underwriting rules that are applicable to where you are.
I mean, clearly our friends in Miami and Tampa are more at odds, or anybody in the Panhandle, than we are in Orlando.
Yeah.
But in Central Florida, we are not immune to hurricanes either.
No. And as we saw with the hurricane last fall, a lot of the hurricane surge is what created a lot of the damage. And people don't understand, honestly, that flood insurance is not part of your home insurance. That's a separate policy. And if people don't tell you, if you're not in a flood zone, you're like, oh, I don't need it.
Yeah.
But it's advisable, if you feel like you're a little on the edge, just get a privately held flood insurance policy.
I want to talk about that in just a second, but how does the deductible work for hurricane-related claims?
So typically, the average is a 2% hurricane deductible. So you would have to set it, let's say that's $15,000. That means you have to come out of pocket $15,000 before the insurance company will start repairing whatever damage is there. And something I'd like to also bring up, during a hurricane, there are a lot of damages, especially if it's a large event. Be mindful that if you only have one broken window, but somebody else lost a roof, it may be a while before the adjusters get to you. Be cognizant and respectful of those who may have lost more than you.
Great advice, great insight there. Can you explain the difference between windstorm coverage and flood insurance? You talked a little bit about flood damage, and there's always confusion with this gray area.
So windstorm is hurricane. So anything that happens from a thunderstorm, hurricane, whatever, that's one thing. Flood insurance is water that comes into the house from the outside. You know, not water backup. Water backup is from your washing machine, your toilet, what have you. You know, somebody put a doll down the toilet, what have you. It happens. It happens. A flood is where the water comes in from the outside because of a flood. That's flood insurance. That is not covered under regular home insurance.
We have time for one quick last question. What is the timeline for filing a complaint after a hurricane event?
You want to be really expeditious with it. You want to video, take pictures, document everything that you can document, and immediately put that claim in. And then, as like I said before, be patient, because if it's a large event, they're just going to be running around trying to get to everybody.
Dionna, great information, great insight. Always good to see you. For more information, go to dailyflashshow.com. @JerseyGirlDionna is her web handle.